Hello and welcome to another episode of the Viva Bastardo show brought to you by the Hagerty Podcast Network. Today we have Jonny Smith, the host of the YouTube show, The Late Break Show, which is such an utterly fascinating car show. It's unlike any other YouTube car show I think that's out there. He has such a broad interest in cars. He's interested in lowriders, electric drag racers, British Leyland 70s cars. He's an all-around fascinating weapons-grade car nerd. So let's get into it. Centurion.
Oh, hi.
Welcome to the awkward blind date that is the Viva Bastardo show.
Awkward blind. I'm down with awkward blind dates.
It was a large part of my single life in New York. I'm pulling up I'm trying to be super fancy, so we've got this black curtain here.
I like it.
No expense spared.
It reminds me of my COVID conference meetings in the spare room.
Yeah, / hostage when you're
Yes.
And then I've got a ring light, so I can't even put my bloody glasses on because then then I get this creepy business.
Oh yeah, you look like you're about to hypnotize people. Or
well, that's what's going to happen, man. There will be hypnosis, and then Jonny Smith will be removing his clothes. That's part of the.
If you angled that at just the right angle and hold that position for 20 seconds.
You will be removing all your kit.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you anything. I'll show you anything. Yeah.
We're off to a fantastic start.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to be squinting at my notes here. I have notes. Are we recording? We are? Okay. Alex says we're recording. Well, you've got some very nice early afternoon light.
It is. It's unfortunately it'll be dark in an hour. So by the end of this,
we better wrap up. You'll be just disappearing.
I'll do the transition of switching the light on. You'll see some LEDs coming on above my head. It's actually really nice out there.
Do you live in the country?
Well, I sort of do, but the office is properly in the country. Let me just see if I can expertly twist my laptop.
Oh, you've got like pond situation.
Oh, amazing ponds. We rent this place on an equestrian farm. So
really?
It's honestly, we lucked out.
How do they respond to the Austin Allegro, the horses?
So the guy that owns the farm, Robin, actually doesn't really care about horses. It's a pure business bit. His daughter manages the horsey bit, and he's old school farmer, and he loves cars. And he's always asking if I can get in anything that's offered. Basically, he built all these ponds 25 years ago, dug them all. One of them is perfect for wading a Land Rover in. So I've dug it just right. As long as you don't go after a heavy rainfall. He keeps saying to me, we can wade. We can do some wading if you want. Get a Hilux or get an Ineos Grenadier. I'm like, okay, all right. Well,
all right, simmer down. Well, so before we launch into it, I should explain. Well, I should do the awkward explanation of who you are, and obviously, Jonny, thank you for coming on the world's most important car / watch / weapons grade nerd podcast. So,
pleasure.
Well, I've been stalking you for years, man. Outside your house, crying, going through your rubbish outside, stealing old bits of laundry on the line.
Oh wow! You didn't take my favourite tracksuit top. Got taken off.
I pinched your Sergio Tacchini, the whole ensemble.
Did you?
I apologise.
Bastard! You Viva bastard!
I apologise. But I've been watching because you've been in this game for years, and for people in America who don't know you, you were fifth gear, you were fully charged, you were writing articles in things called magazines that were made of paper that were delivered to people. That our newer audience members may not have heard of, magazines. But the Late Break Show, I think this is what your current endeavor, but I think you're doing something that I think no other YouTuber is doing, in the sense that you have such a keen sense of concept. And I wonder if that comes from having to pitch stories when you're working at magazines that were centered around an idea. So you have the Late Break Show, but then you have these kind of little satellite sub-brands under, like the Idle Chat, Car Caves, Barn Finds, all these little satellite ideas that kind of revolve around the main planetoid that is the Late Break Show. And that's really different.
Well, thank you. I think it probably is born out of magazines, coming up with kind of popular chapters in a mag, but also it's pretty much the way my brain works. The Late Break Show was born out of, it was my wife actually who just said, look, if you're going to go at it alone after doing it for years for other people, this new cars there, old cars there, electric this, blah blah blah, she said you've got to just download your mind the way you digest cars and car life
right
onto a channel. And she said,
that's exactly right, man. Because what's interesting about, I mean, there's car YouTubers, and I know you may be loath to be called a YouTuber, but I mean,
I'm all right with it now. I'm okay with it now.
It's, but you've come to terms with it through intensive therapy. But there's a bit of a formula. You know, you'll either talk about new cars, or you'll sort of serially get a new car, and then you'll wrap it, and then you put an exhaust on it, and you change the wheels, and you flog it, and you'll be like the great unveil for the next new car, and then that will be wrapped, and I'll get a new exhaust, etc., etc. But what's interesting about it is you're quite right that it's a real reflection of who you are, which is quite lovely because it's all manner of miscellanea and oddities.
It is miscellanea. That's a good one. I think what makes it harder is that there is such an eclectic mix. Sort of, we've made a rod for our own backs in so much as trying to always keep that variety circling round. You know, what if I do a barn find, then I don't want to do a barn find straight after it. If I haven't done a new car recently, I've got to do a new car, then an old car, then a bit of a cultural chat. So for the purposes of scheduling videos, it's an absolute clusterfuck.
But look, I mean, what are some of the, like you are currently? Let's give some of the listeners some of the things you've gone down the blathersphere into, whatever that word is. You've got your Austin Allegro Restomod situation, which people in America won't know what that is, but maybe you want to explain the monster of a vehicle that is an Austin Allegro.
Well, it's Britain's most hated car, I would say. It certainly was for the last 40 years. Weirdly, this year I've just realised it celebrates its 50th birthday. But
doesn't that conversely make it weirdly popular now in England because people love the thing that they hated?
Yeah, there's a real irony to them now. The values of them have just started going up in the last couple of years.
So it was a passenger car made in the 70s?
70s, 4 and 2-door, but mostly 4. They did an station wagon, but it was 2-door. Right. Oh, don't just love the pointlessness. The 2-door estate. I love it. I love it. It's like I've got a family and I've got more stuff, but you've just given me less doors.
Because it's sporty.
Because it's still sporty.
Yeah.
But, so the Allegro was, it's sort of oil crisis-ish era, and up to the early 80s.
And was it a British Leyland car?
Yes.
Yeah.
So think of it as a sort of flabby, less popular Mini.
Well,
that's the way I look at it. It has DNA of Mini in it.
The car I grew up with, which I'm sure will fill you with joy, was an Austin Maxi.
Oh, sweet.
In brown, it was the honey colour exterior with the sort of post-Vindaloo curry poo interior, yes. But perforated seats that left your thighs looking like you contracted some sort of tropical rash.
I know that. Yeah, my dad had a Maxi. He got hit by on the way home from
by
work.
Our Maxi.
He got hit by a drunk hit and run driver, and it tore the whole. He was at a junction, just poking the nose out to the T junction. And it tore the whole front off the car. He drove home in pitch dark with no front of the car. There was nothing on the front of the car. And he came in.
Did he notice there was no front?
He came in white as a sheet, and I've had an accident, and but he said I've got to be at work at 7 a.m. next morning. So he went out there with a load of piano wire. I remember it vividly. I was really young. Load of piano wire and wired on a spare pair of headlights that he'd got because he just tore the ones off. And no front grille, no number plate, no bumper, just a pair of eyes that were wired into place. And he just drove to work the next morning. The car's still
as you do.
As you do. But the Maxi was actually not as crap as everybody thought, because that was a hatchback, 5-speed. I think it was one of the first British 5-speeder standard cars. and it could the seats could fold flat. You probably remember this.
Yeah.
Roundabout.
I have just such memories of my father driving me to school in that car, but we'd have to go to the car and he'd have to pull the choke and let it go, let it run for a bit, just before we could drive off.
Give it a tickle. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to upset it in any way.
You got to give it a minute in the morning. Just like
that's
some
right.
People, the alarm goes off, they get straight up. Other people, same as cars, alarm will go off. You just got to have a bit of a okay. Well, this is it. I'm gonna just slide here 30 more seconds. Then eyes open. Then I'm going to go to the bathroom. It'll be fine. And the Maxi, or most British cars of that era, I like. I still do that now. I don't like to turn the key and go. I'm not a turn the key and instantly go guy.
What do you do?
Because I have too much.
You sit in the car and ruminate.
I do. It's mechanical sympathy. I almost count to 30 to let the oil get a bit of a head start. And then in the olden days, this is when you'd be choosing the CD. Of course, you don't do that.
That's right.
Is to get the wallet of CDs and go, what is it today? Is it Rage Against the Machine Day? Or is it, I don't know.
Rage Against the Machine you know what was the follow-up to the Austin Maxi? You'll find this droll.
Was it a Maestro?
No, my parents followed.
Oh, your car?
Yeah, it was. Well, I come from extraordinary lineage of automotive lineage. It was a Volvo, not
340,
345,
345. I knew it wouldn't be 240. It's too big.
Yeah, too big. Yeah.
Oh wow! So the Dutch Volvo for sure. Yeah,
is that Dutch?
Volvo. Yeah, it was basically a rebadged DAF.
Was it?
And I think they only made them in the Netherlands. There will be a list now that points out that I may be wrong, but yeah, they were. If you want to get a bit geeky, I think they had a transaxle gearbox. So the gearbox was at the back like a Porsche 944.
Well, that's why obviously they went for it. They were like, Porsche 944 Transax is very similar.
They understeered like a bastard. And,
around Park Lane. A little bit of a handbrake.
Yeah, I actually claimed one for free that had been abandoned at the local railway station. It had been there for well over a year with loads of messages, and tickets saying this car's going to be taken away, and it never did. And I think a tramp might have slept in it for a while. And one day I just couldn't bear it anymore. I went to the ticket office, the guy that ran the company. What's the deal with this?
Were they messages? Were they the most polite? Were they English messages?
English
sir,
messages.
if you would be so kind, dear sir.
Yes. No, it's been 10 months now. This is getting a bit silly. Come on.
That is peak English rage for our American listeners. This is getting a bit silly.
Yeah, come on. It was like that, and I actually, the guy said to me, he said, "Are you interested?" I said, "Yeah, I'd get it back on the road." And he went, "Come and get it on Friday, but it has to be before 9 a.m. And that was it. And
did he do that? He led the lean in.
He did the lean.
So you knew something untoward was afoot.
It was like basically I got to pay to get rid of this.
Give me a couple
car,
of quid, son.
Yeah. It was either I pay a scrap guy to come and get it, or you just come and take it.
Did it drive?
It drove. Not only that, once I applied to get the documents, I found out it was a 2-owner car, 40,000 miles.
Previously owned by Rod Stewart.
He loves an understeery
345. He's a huge 345 collector. It's a little known fact about Rod Stewart.
Massive.
Mura, and then all 345s.
Yeah, they've become back in the sort of mid 2000s in the UK. They became cult cars amongst 18-year-olds. Believe it or not, I'm not making it because they were the only rear-wheel drive car that a 18, 17-year-old could afford to insure.
Right.
So there was this subculture of like OAP spec, like beige Volvos that were lowered, and they were having their diffs welded and stuff and being skidded around.
Spinners, underlighting.
Bit of underlight and a bit of but because they're some of them had Renault engines, people were putting Clio 182 F7P.
Your knowledge of esoterica, man, is staggering. So for people, we should just talk. I want to sort of talk about the bizarre menagerie, 19th century traveling circus that is the Late Break Show. Because, well, first of all, can we talk about you were originally Jonny Car Pervert, And then you had some sort of IRS situation.
Yeah.
Can you tell?
I was nicknamed the Car Pervert by my sort of friends. Forums, if you remember, people on forums. I don't mean the dark web. I mean like normal car forums.
Right.
And when I went freelance, I had to name my company. You had to set up a company, and I decided to just call it Car Pervert Limited. But then Companies House, who you register these things with, said, I think that's sort of offensive. I'm not sure we're going to let you call it that. So I said, are you sure? Really? It's Car Pervert. It's cars. It's not. I'm not a sex person. And they went, no, we can't do it. I'm so sorry, sir. So I said, can I just shorten it? How about Car Perv? And they went, yeah, that's fine. So that
because no one will know what perv means.
No, nobody
they won't
knows.
make that connection. They won't make that leap.
No, it's so easy to mix up. And then fast forward to when I decided to jump into YouTube on my own in 2020. But just thought, well, we'll just go with the Car Pervert name, and the vast majority of people were okay with it. But I'll be honest, it was a lot of the American audience who found it a little bit offensive.
Sure.
And then I suppose with my taking business a little bit more seriously head on, I think probably working with brands, it was easier to call it something else on the car. So it's still a sub brand of me, and we still sell merch.
One of your many persona. Conversely, when I was trying to trademark Viva Bastardo in England, they initially refused it, and I got the most English letter saying, "Oh, bastard's a bit offensive now," and then there was this amazing back and forth between our English solicitor and the supreme overlords in England about why they were giving examples of how like lucky bastard, happy bastard, like how it's become it's used in the vernacular. Bastard. It's not conceived in the 16th century way, a pejorative way anymore. But there was this amazing back and forth between the solicitor and the office of whatever approvals.
I think I've got to say for that, it's great. And I very much like your merch.
Thanks, man. I'll send you some. Is that a silent plea, a silent request?
Well, should we do a merch amnesty where I send you some of ours and you send me some of yours, and we do a little sort of.
I like that. I even like that name.
Like a merch amnesty.
It implies there's been a feud, some sort of generational blood feud for hundreds of years. So it's interesting because, as I was saying earlier, like your YouTube channel, what you do really reflects you, and you don't follow that kind of the formula. And what's interesting to me is that things like, isn't your Austin Allegro Restomod thing, isn't that one of the most popular videos you have on your channel?
Yeah, it's by far my most popular project car. And when you look, it gets more attention and more thought-provoking comments. It's bizarre.
So what does that tell you about this kind of the popular wisdom that, you've got to always be showing the latest Lambo with a new exhaust, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, that to me says something really interesting about what people really want.
Yeah, I think it's the guilty pleasure thing. I think we all have automotive guilty pleasures. So even if you can afford pretty exotic cars, there's probably a car in your head somewhere from the back catalogue that you go, do you know what, they are a bit rubbish, or I don't know if I'd want to be seen in it, but I do like it. And then it's to make that okay, which is why when I was trying to devise the Late Break Show, I thought I want people who have McLarens to be cool to park next to people with Austin Metros and Allegros, because there'll be some common ground. There's a lot of common ground. There's an automotive appreciation. It's like a church that we can all go to and go, yeah, I don't exactly want to own your car necessarily, but I might aspire to it, or I might like an aspect of it. And I think the Allegro is just something I have to get out of my system. And I always.
Why is that? Exactly.
I grew up with a grandma and grandpa that had one, and they had a Harvest Gold one with a square steering wheel. So the thing about the Austin Allegro, which made it infamous for a lot of the US viewers, listeners, it had a square steering wheel or a quartic wheel.
That is very that's very avant-garde for a British Leyland. Do you know why it had a square steering wheel?
I think they said it was easier to see the controls, to see the dash pinnacle. But there was, and it got dropped after the first 18 months of production.
So, of course, I would assume that square steering wheel Allegros are worth, they're off the charts for value or something.
They're the 911 RS 1973s of the Allegro
That's
world.
right. That's right.
So it's kind of, it's going back to what you said before, it's hit an age where there's an irony cool to it. I think AMC Pacers have done it in the States, and AMC Gremlins, all the things that were kind of hated for years. It's suddenly cool to like it. Like, I'm okay with that.
But there's also, I would also say there's a similar move in the States for these kind of cars that were so uncool that they've done. I mean, there's kind of this, I've always thought there's a circle of cool where stuff's really cool and then it sort of goes around the circle, gets less and less and less cool, and then it's so shit that it's amazing again. It's adjacent to genius.
Yeah.
And so I see a lot of Volvo 240s, the regular bricks drive, and I love those.
They're cool in Scandinavia again, amongst like sub 25-year-olds.
Right, that's right.
They were so uncool, no one wanted to go near them. And then this new wave of people came in and kind of went, oh, driving this sort of old dad or uncle's grandpa's car is actually quite cool. And then then that spurs off all the modifications that they can do with it, the engine transplant.
Why don't you you should go to Sweden to do a whole thing? Surely someone's done a whole thing on that.
Yeah, well, I did a couple of things for Fifth Gear on TV years ago, but I'd like to do some myself. Sweden's actually that and Norway, they're my favourite countries in the world.
Why?
Here's why.
I feel like you need your notebook, man. You need your notebook. Yes, I love the notebook. That's one of my favourite parts is the notebook. I feel like there's nothing in there anyway.
Oh, no, I have. It's over there, actually. We just get. I have full notebooks everywhere. It's because I've got a terrible memory. But the reason why I think Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, have got the best scenery of it. Very, very good standard of living. Minimum wage, like, it's good, and healthcare is good. That's sensible. But this is where it gets cool. Is they're into this sort of renewable energy. They sell all their fossil fuels to other people, which I love. They go, do you know what, we don't need this. Let's forget to someone who's not needed. But they've got a real interest for classic American cars. So there's this mad juxtaposition. Like in the summer, you go to Sweden, and it's full of 50s fins and chrome American cars, beautiful people. Notice I said people, not just women, men too.
Right. Especially coming from England.
Oh yeah.
And I say this as an English person. No one's really attractive in England. It's always a scientific. It's a scientific anomaly if anyone's attractive. And you go to other countries. You go, what? This is weird. People are attractive here.
Mm-hmm. It's a thing. So I think that the Scandinavia is really fascinating. I nearly died in Norway once, and ever since then I have an affinity to it because I had to have an organ taken out of my body. When we were filming,
I feel like first of all that sounds like a title of an Aha song. I nearly died. But what organ did you leave in Norway? I left my heart in San Francisco. What?
Well, I left my appendix in a place called Christiansand. But basically, I was doing a Discovery Channel documentary series on huge industrial processes, and this particular one we were following the process of oil under the sea all the way to the pump, your local fuel station. And we had to start the process on an oil rig out in the Atlantic Ocean, about an hour's flight on a helicopter. And rigorous checks were made months ahead of going out there. And
of your appendix?
Well, of my body, physically, you have to have a lot of physical checks. You have to, they don't let you on an oil rig if you're a bit, I don't know, heart attacky and a bit diabetic. You know what I mean? They're very strict. So we get on this rig after all this prep, wearing the survival suit on the helicopter to get out there. And about a day and a half into filming, I get what I think to be quite bad indigestion because I think I eat quickly. I just ate too quickly. The food was amazing on this rig. One thing led to another, and about another 24 hours later, we were filming still, and I was taking a lot of painkillers to just get rid of the pain. It wasn't working. And the medic on the rig was like, I don't really think you should be on here. You don't have any medical history of stomach ulcers. yeah, in the middle of the night, it got so unbearable. They called the chopper.
You were medevaced off an oil rig.
I was medevaced off, and my appendix had burst, and I was, according to the doctor anyway, I had about 3 hours left. If there'd been a storm and they couldn't have landed on the rig, I would have died.
Jesus.
Yeah. So.
Can you request your organ after the? Can you say, could I have it in a paperweight, like a lucite?
I don't know. I should have done, shouldn't I? To be honest, I was sort of hallucinating, and I was in quite a bad way. And
when was this?
This was 2008.
Jesus.
No, 2008. November 2008. Pre-children, BC. Yeah, it was a bit mad. I could only remember a few snippets of it, of feeling really ill. I had to phone my mum and my wife while the nurse was touching me. And I had to also, I remember lying on my side because they put me in a stretcher.
That was an amazing aside, by the way. While the nurse was touching me.
I won't go into detail on this podcast, but properly touching me. But
that's for the OnlyFans.
Medically, not just for the sake of it.
It wasn't just for fun.
Yeah, no, she just no.
Hey.
I remember lying on my side, being stretchered out of the helicopter and going into the helicopter into the back of an ambulance. And I remember going, "It's a Mercedes ambulance." That's about all I remember.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's. And
did you get you with one hand? You were fumbling for the notebook. You're just trying to take some.
Yeah, I know. So I felt like I was in hospital for about a week there, and then off work for, I don't know, 6 weeks. But yeah, no cars on an oil rig. Surprise, surprise. But I just really like, just always fascinated by Scandinavia. I just think they're sort of like
they've got it sorted out.
They've got their equilibrium. Yeah, they're just
right.
If you've never been there, I would highly recommend.
America's like that, man.
Absolutely.
I
mean, I've not been to enough parts of America. There's a huge chunks I've not been to.
You should come over here and do a whole extravaganza, man.
Well, Phil,
you could drive the Shamal.
Could I?
What's that?
Could I?
Yeah.
I'd very much like to. I haven't come to the States for a while. 2018, maybe 2019, and it feels like forever. So there's a number of things I'd like to do out there to get content for the Late Break Show. Really.
So you also on the subject of the Late Break Show, I will doff my cap to your graphic designer, whoever that is, because you've got a really good, as an ex-art director, like typography obsessive person, your typography is genius.
You think so?
Yeah, it's really nice.
Oh,
you know
thanks.
how I want to take and shake vigorously is no doubt your chums. That is Sam from Seen Through Glass. His logo design, I'm just going to say, is a crime against society. I know. I just want to help. I just want to say, look, I will do it for free, man. I will design for free.
You're not the first person to have said that.
He's not helping himself.
I guess beauty is in the eye of the cup holder. But I'm a bit funny about stuff. And when we're coming up with the name of the new name for the show, forever going through like, well, what should it look like? Should it be really car-y? Should it just be nice and straight? And actually, the inspiration for the original got Stickerson.
But you started in 2020, right?
Yeah, I launched the Late Break Show
in the pandemic.
No, 6 weeks before the world imploded. So I decided to go at it on my own.
Yeah.
On a digital platform. 6 weeks before the world got turned upside down and got put in a washing machine. Yeah, it was an interesting time for everybody, obviously. But
I mean, I would almost imagine that it would that you have a. I mean, you've been doing it for so long that you had a base of people who liked you and followed you, and then they wanted more content. They were sitting around during the pandemic wanting more stuff to watch. So you had people wanting to see, but then conversely, it was tougher to make content.
Exactly that. I think people were keen to kind of get involved and view it and comment. The feedback was lovely. So it built organically well. But yeah, trying to make the content, I'm sure you know that YouTube is like a treadmill of content. It's very different to making TV. and it's exhausting, frankly, as I've discovered.
You said that YouTube is liberation. You said, Jonny.
It is very liberating because I spent years, you said it at the beginning of this show, actually, I spent years kind of pitching ideas to either commissioners for TV shows or magazines who loved the idea but just didn't have the budget to make it come to fruition. And I got quite disillusioned with the fact that what I thought was going to be a great TV idea for a car theme or a car-centric show just fell on deaf ears from commissioners that knew nothing about cars, or they just wanted a copy and paste of Top Gear. So I was like, well, come, it's such a big world. There's so many of us that are interested. There's so many genres within cars, vehicles. And that's why I just thought we're going to have to splurge this into a YouTube channel. And if it doesn't work on a YouTube channel, then officially I'm just a lonely, sad man that has a very odd taste in vehicles. But I think what's good about it is it's made people, I think it's made it okay for people. I've had numerous people who say, Jonny, I know I've done well in business. I've got a Ferrari 812 super fast. I've got this. I've got an Escort Mexico, a rally. I've got this. I can't stop watching your Allegro feature. I think it's amazing. And you just go, and he goes, I hate myself for saying this, but I'm saying it. And I think it's no one's done it, so let's just do it. I think it's that. Well,
I think you're also not giving yourself credit. I think that for me, YouTube is sort of divided into there's informational people you watch because you're interested in the specific car they're talking about, but then there are people you watch because you kind of, and this is going to sound a bit creepy, you kind of envision yourself. I mean, I know I've said a lot of creepy things already. you could speed up, you could text the lawyer and set up the restraining order while we're talking. But there's people on YouTube you watch because you feel like you could be friends with them. And so you will watch them talk about anything because it's kind of like having a mate in the background blathering about something. And you don't really care what they're talking about. It's just, do you like that person? And you are one of those people. I mean, Chris Harris is well, you are, man. You're a very sort of, you've got kind of a cocktail of interesting characteristics that, and Chris Harris is sort of like that. I don't know what that means.
I know what you're saying. That's really kind of you. I mean, I suppose I can't act for Toffee. So I never try to kind of G up or accentuate the situation. I hate the sound of my own voice, actually. I hated doing voiceovers for TV and stuff because you'd have to listen.
Every time I hear my own voice, I think, God, I sound like such a dick.
Yeah, boring. Boring, but that's what I think. So I'm quite quietly spoken, so I'm the sort of opposite to a lot of YouTubers because the YouTuber template is to be quite shouty, quite in your face, and I'm just naturally not like that. So I thought I always try and supplement.
Well, you're English.
Being English probably helps, and I guess just trying to have as much information on the subject as you can. And actually, I said this to a friend of mine the other week. My aspiration still is, haven't got there unfortunately yet, but I want to be the Louis Theroux of the car. That's always been my.
That's genius, man. I think. Well, actually, you know what? You are perfect for that. That's a great analogy because he's got this kind of. I watched him talking to Judi Dench the other day, and he said
she's so Dench.
Well, she made some comment about the war, about some. I can't remember what it was. I haven't seen that since the war or something. And he said, "Which war?" And then she went, "How dare you?" But then he did this kind of gloriously Louis Theroux thing. It was like, it could be a Vietnam War.
That's right.
He said, "Did I save myself?" And so he's kind he's so kind of human.
He's brilliant.
And that's what's. I mean, that's what I like in when I watch you, or when you watch other YouTubers that like Chris Harris is quite human, although I understand he's actually doesn't like people, but I don't know him, so who knows?
I get on just fine with Chris.
Right. I feel like it would be really intimidating.
A lot of people say that.
Because I know nothing about cars, really, how they work.
Yeah, you do.
No, I don't know anything about how cars work, man. I don't really know how to drive. I'm a shit driver. I'm baffled by the mechanics of it all, but I know a lot about cars generally. But
and the culture.
Yeah,
and there's lots of elements of cars, as you know, isn't there? I think Chris is obviously a very hot driver, but I think he loves the nuts and bolts. But I think the reason why he got the job on Top Gear, I suspect, is because he is quite prickly. Like Clarkson.
He is pretty. You sense in Chris, from my intimate knowledge of Chris Harris, that he would not suffer fools. That's my feeling. And when I've watched the Top Gear, I feel like I'm not sure he likes those guys very much. You'd have to comment on this at all. You'd have to, but it feels like, especially the tall geezer. What's his name? Paddy. I'm not sure.
I think they are friends. I mean, I think he's really enjoying it now. I think I felt sorry for him a bit when he first got the job and it was Chris Evans.
Right.
Because just wasn't sure that was ever going to work with Chris, and it consequently didn't. But Chris Harris came out of that well, because everyone went, well, this guy knows all about the cars. He knows how to drive the cars 10 tenths, if you so wish, all the time. And he always has a really well-informed view, I think. So it just comes from a background of being a good journalist. He's curious. He's
right. And can you drive like that?
Hell no.
Can you drive like even close to that?
No, not even. I wouldn't say close. I mean, how close do you want to be? I'd say no. I'm probably not even half Chris. I got a lot better when I started working on the TV, because we used to film on racetracks a lot, and we would get the opportunity to drive a lot of pre-production, really quite priceless cars. So you just concentrate better and you listen better. And I miss not doing as much stuff on track as I did. And I guess it's like anything. You go out there and someone goes, look, it's an AMG Merc. They're not your tyres. It's not your car. It's not your fuel. You're insured. You've even got great life insurance if your business goes. And just go and do something. Just go and do something. And I'm working around people like Tiff, Nadell, and Jason, Plato, and Vicky. I was surrounded by people who could drive beautifully, who I'd idolise as a young kid watching Top Gear, old Top Gear.
Sure.
And they just sort of welcomed me into the family. And Tiff and Jason would be like, well, when you go, I just used to watch it. You'd be in the passenger seat, watch their car control at high speed, and you'd just be like, God, that doesn't look hard. I know it is hard. It doesn't look hard.
That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
It always looks so effortless. Like every time I watch, any of those guys like Tiff or Chris doing this, whatever lunacy they're doing, it always feel like, surely it can't be that. But as you say, I know I'd be into the shrubbery immediately.
It's just practice. But what the other level they take it to, and this is what Tiff broke the wall of it in the 80s with on Top Gear, is he could do that on the limit and have a really calm conversation like I am with you now.
Right.
And I've had conversations with Tiff at 140, looking out the side window, and he'd be talking about like, what time's lunch? I want ham, chips. Don't give me any vegetables.
Right.
But cool as hell. And
there would be no words coming out of my mouth if I was.
There's not many words when I'm doing that, because I always felt the pressure to perform, because I knew I was the weakest driver out of the bunch. Right. But I wanted to make sure that even the weakest on fifth gear was still able to skid a car. Do you miss
TV at all, or not really?
I miss some parts of it. There's a lot I don't miss, but I do miss some. Yeah. And someone asked me a couple of weeks ago, you should do another TV show. It's like, oh, if TV wants to speak to me, they can. I mean, I'm busy, but I think I'm not going to chase it anymore.
Do you miss? I would imagine that the thing, the one benefit TV offers is budget.
Yeah, 100%.
But then
TV always has a great budget.
Right.
Often,
but then conversely, they're not. TV tends not to be audacious. Like you said, I'm sure there's this. You can express yourself fully now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess I'm in control of my own destiny now, for better and for worse. So I can just wake up and look through all my notes, or speak to Lisa in the office here, look at our planner on the wall and go, I really want to drive an old Hilux. And then you go, well, why? Oh, I don't know. I'll think of something. Or you just read that there was some mad old person in years gone by that did this or that. And I just go, yeah, we should do something about that. We should champion. Some of the best, I think, some of my favourite episodes I've done on the channel, the Late Break Show, I've actually been the worst performing as views.
Like
I'm the proudest. But like the Colin McRae's first ever rally car, the Hillman Avenger, that he basically borrowed and switched number plates on it so we could take it on the road illegally. I mean,
how's that not a hugely? I mean, that's Colin McRae.
I know, and the car is brilliant because that car had a history before McRae that was just interesting in its own right. It was an ex-Paris Motor Show turntable car that then got taken straight from Paris, like having had the best paint any British car has ever had. Stripped bare, turned into a stage rally car for Roots Group. I mean, like, that doesn't happen very often.
Right.
And it survived McRae as a 17-year-old tearaway, entering a rally that his parents didn't know about because they were on holiday. And he borrowed the tow car, got there, and then they went, oh yeah, there's a road section as well. He went, there's a road section? I don't think this car's MOT'd. And they went, oh. And he went and realised that the Avenger that he was towing it with was a similar era. And he just switched the number plates around. And Scooter went, yeah, okay. And then, and that was that, So again, those sorts of stories. And I did one of an Alpha ages ago, one of the early Car Pervert videos. It was an Alpha SZ, which is still a car that I just...
Wait, you're talking about the 90s one?
Yeah.
I had one of those.
Yeah, the one with 6 headlights. Did you?
Yes.
Oh, you madman.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I've had an extraordinary number of odd cars. I thought that was I thought that was you know what I love about that car. Did you lift the bonnet?
Yes, and it weighs about 7 times more than any other bonnet I've ever lifted. Cadillac bonnets.
Yeah. And what I love about that car is that they were trying to use all these highfalutin new materials and to make it, I guess, lightweight maybe. But then the bonnet is, as you say, it's like a person. It's like several people.
I thought it was a joke. I actually thought that the hinges were seized and that it was just trying to close itself. So we were filming at the time, and I was like, you could see it in my face, go, God, that's so heavy. What's going on? But yeah, I thought that car was amazing. I really, really enjoyed that.
I'm amazed those cars have not gone mental. I mean, what? There's a couple of things I loved about it. First of all, I could stuff my fingers between the panel caps.
Yeah.
I had car number 18. I bought it with, it had 1,200 kilometers on it.
Gosh, that's nothing.
Yeah, and I chipped it. And then I think I straight piped it because I felt like it wasn't loud enough. Because I really was trying to squeeze some more horsepowers out of it.
Yeah. It's a great engine.
And
it was a good car in many ways.
Yeah, it's just, if that car was, it's a 2-liter or 2.5?
I think it is oh gosh, you got me there. Is it 2.5?
I think it's 2.5 because then some joint in England, they bore them out to 3-liter or something. And I think that car with more power and less weight would be perfect.
It would.
Imagine and not in red.
Yes. Imagine if you could remake that shell in carbon fibre.
Yeah.
Or another modern composite, that plant-based kind of flax fibre.
In hemp seed?
Yeah.
And then algae.
That's possible. I'm sure it's possible. Algafied body shell.
An alga.
Talking of which, I just realised. I've only just realised. I've left on the chair. I've got my Barn Find Fleece here. My BFF.
Is that an upcoming episode? Barn Find Fleece.
Well, that's what I wear in all the Barn Find episodes of the show. I have to wear the BFF. It's become an unofficial.
Wait, it is actually a Barn Find Fleece.
Well, no, it's the fleece I always wear when I just seem to always put it on when I know I'm going to be outside all day, crawling around under a car, and you can't see if it gets muddy. So the BFF became a bit thick.
I thought that you found that in like the back seat of an abandoned 345 or something.
I have found some terrible stuff. I've never found a good fleece.
Why do you think the SZ never took off? Never became like a massively expensive car?
As a collector's car.
Yeah.
I think it's because people are scared. I think people like it's one of those cars where people like the idea of it, but not the reality of it. And I get people saying that to me about things like American cars in the UK. They'll see me in the Dodge.
They're scared of what though exactly?
I don't actually know. This is the thing, because they'll see me in the Dodge at a car show, and it'll park next to lots of supercars, and people will just go, "Wow, it's a classic Charger." And I go, "Well, you could buy one of these for, at the time, whatever, 15 grand, 18 grand, and what? Could I? Yeah, you can. Yeah. What? But it's left-hand drive. Yeah, I know it's left-hand drive. Don't worry, it's not that bad. And then they go, oh, but like, how do I keep one on the road in the UK? Well, you just order parts and fit it. It's about as simple as a car gets. There's this sort of semi-phobia. And my friend Simon, who has a lot of vintage American cars, he thinks that there's left-hand drive racists in them who just simply doesn't matter what car it is. So you could take a Ford Sierra Cosworth, same mileage, same condition. If the left-hand drive one is there, the right-hand drive one's there, the right-hand drive one will go for 100,000 quid. Left-hand drive one will go for 40,000. Exactly the same.
I will say that I have a right-hand drive Pajero Evolution.
Oh, what a car!
Yeah, but you know what? I feel like I might be an RHD racist.
No
because
Don't
when
be that guy.
Well, because I find it hard to make myself drive it because first of all, it's a stick shift, which is quite rare.
Yes.
So I'm always winding down the window instead of bloody changing gear.
Yeah.
And then it's best to drive.
It trains you though. I like cars that challenge you a bit, don't you think? Presumably you don't drive it every day.
Well, no, for a while I was using it for the school run.
Oh,
but then the urchin would have to get out into traffic.
Yeah, that's not so good, is it?
I'd come on. I say it doesn't matter. You know what this car is? Paris Dakar.
That's right.
Respect the car, child.
But that car's getting better with age. I think it's looking better and better with age.
Well, it's you know what I like about that car? It reminds me of I used to also own a Mercedes Evo 2, a 190 Evo 2. It's stayed manufacturers making a bizarre, bonkers-looking thing. Like it's just Mitsubishi, like, oh yeah, we'll put these fins on the back of that car. I don't even know what I mean, really, do they do anything?
Below 140, and when you're not on a desert, probably not.
But even at 100, but really, like what? Even on a sand dune at 140 miles an hour, like what's that? Like lateral wind stability?
They were just selling the dream, though, weren't they?
Yeah.
They when you build a homologation type car, I guess there are things you have to do, and then there are things of like, well, let's just flare it up. You've got to be a poster. Put these on there. Those wheels could be jiggle jangle.
The car has a factory option which was carbon fiber ish air vents.
Carbon fablon.
Ish? What's carbon? Yeah, I don't know if it's real carbon fiber. It's pretend carbon fiber, but they're on the air vents only, and then the gauge surround. But this is 97.
Oh, I know. It probably wasn't real.
Yeah,
that sort of like misted airbrush work. Makes it look 3D when it's not.
Yeah.
You've had such good cars, though. I can't compete with your cars.
Well, I was thinking about it. Thank you, man. I was thinking about it. I was quite lucky because I was buying a lot of stuff before people were sort of paying attention to all of that stuff, and then I would sell it for more money and then buy other things that people weren't paying attention to. But now I think I've weirded myself into a corner where I've sort of all the stuff there's not much left that I can afford. Cue small violin, but
yes, yeah.
You know, like, but then I'm in Maserati Shamal or De Tommaso Guara land where people are like, what the fuck is that?
But that's good though, because you've got a little bit more rare groove as time's gone up. Your confidence is up, so you haven't gone for the things that people expect you to buy because you probably already had. What? You went, I'll have one of those in 1999. I don't need it.
Yeah, but then what happens with those kind of things is then when it comes to sell it, people are like, well, I don't know what that is. And no one's interested.
Yeah, I've had that a few times. Yeah. I imported a couple of Volvo 262 Batonis from America.
Oh, I love that car, man. That's on my list.
Yeah, I bought one and then got the hots. And then 6 weeks later, before it had even been shipped from the States, I bought another one. One came from Arizona, one came from Virginia.
Got the hot sounds like a gastrointestinal situation.
I did. I got. It was like for us. That's proper sort of disco era too.
Please tell me. I love that comment. Was it with the Landau roof? Both of them?
Padded vinyl, lovely. One was really good condition. It had been well looked after with a decent history.
The interiors are insane on those things.
Oh, some button tuck leather, quilted, and the headlining was interesting as well from memory. And there was something about it. It's so pointless, the whole car. Take a practical.
Wait, we should explain.
Car,
you should explain. You should explain what it is.
Well, it's a Volvo 240. And I think it was made exclusively for the American market. I think they tried to make it look like a Buick Regal, because that's what it's sort of aimed. But they chopped the roof down. Bertoni, the coach builder, took it from Volvo, chopped the roof down, made it padded vinyl, Landau, and then gave it a kind of 70s designer interior.
And it's two-door, right?
Two-door.
Yeah.
And
special wheels?
Yes, it had the very sort of tightly finned, the same wheels I believe they put on the DeLorean DMC.
That's what I was thinking. I was wondering if they were the same wheels.
And of course, it's the same engine. It's that PRV, is it?
Yeah, the Peugeot, whatever it is.
Peugeot,
Volvo.
Renault, Volvo, 2.8 V6. It's a bit of a boat anchor, frankly, but hey. So yeah, that engine in it, and you could order it as a manual or an auto, but most of them were auto. And then you just cruised around. It was like the sort of like disco era doctor's car, I'm going to say. So it's sort of sensible, but a bit disco as well.
But was it nice to drive around in?
It was great. It was really great.
I saw a guy at a car show who has one, and he's completely customized it, all black. I think he removed the bumpers, slammed, big wheels. I mean, the whole business. I think he also has a different engine in there. Like some sort of like, yeah, exactly. Some sort of Corvette business.
Which is completely logical.
It makes sense.
It probably weighs less than the original engine, and it goes like, and that was my logic with the Allegro project, going for the Civic Type R motor. It's like it weighs so much less than the iron old British Leyland A series. But yet it's how many tons?
Didn't you also make an electric dragster?
Yeah.
As one does.
That's right. Yes,
I like how you say yes, like it's a perfectly reasonable. Yeah. It's completely reasonable. That was for the family school run, right?
Yeah, that was absolutely. That was, wanted something economical.
Can you tell me a bit about the electric dragster?
That was exciting. Back in the sort of early 2000s, I started to see a couple of American guys in Oregon who'd swapped out their engines in a few piston cars with EV drivetrains, and they were drag racing cars, and they were street legal cars, and there were annoying Corvettes and Vipers on the strip, and I just thought this was great. And I did a couple of magazine articles. I just became sort of obsessed, and I thought, I've got to try and do this at some point. This is like the new era of hot rodding. And fast forward to 2012, and I decided to just go for it. I've been researching what car. I think, I've got to do an underdog car. I've got to do a car that nobody cares about. Rare, but nobody cares. So I found a British electric car from the oil crisis era that nobody remembers, not even anyone in Britain. Made on the Isle of Wight. They only sold 120 of them. And it was made by Enfield, if you remember Enfield, the motorcycle.
I thought you were going to say Sinclair C5 or something.
Oh no, I mean they're rubbish. But so this Enfield 8000, I became fixated with one. It took me about a year and a half to find one. Found a flood damaged one, and embarked on this journey of turning it into the world's quickest street legal electric car. I was going for Europe's quickest because I thought the world it's a big place. It's a tough one. But as we got the recipe kind of better and better, we did fully immerse ourselves into it. I had a bit of sponsorship, but really not a lot given the task of trying to get this thing to go down the strip and be road legal and be on street tires, not slicks. And this was before Formula E.
So was there a number, like a quarter mile number that you had to beat to be the world's?
Yeah. In the chap called John Wayland. If you've never heard of John Wayland, who has a Datsun called the White Zombie in Oregon, and he was setting all of these records. He's still a pioneer, really. It's great.
Did you have a name for the car?
Yeah, Johnny's Flux Capacitor.
That is not very English, man. I would thought it'd be
No,
Earl Grey or something.
I should. We were gonna. I came up with I found a little post-it of all the little designs I'd come up with. I found it the other day. We were going to call it all sorts of things. Bat out of hell, BATT. We were going to do all sorts of stuff.
You could have gone Old English, BATTE.
Oh, could have done that.
Like, shoppy.
Shoppy, Old English shoppy.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun with that car because we were the outcasts. We'd turn up at the drag track and all of the V8 guys would keep us at arm's length. They just did not understand what we were up to. The car was comical because it was such a short car. It's 9 foot long, this car. The wheelbase is less than me. So I'm 6'3". It was less than me.
Can I just interject? Did you know that you're 6'3"?
Yeah.
One of the top searches that comes up when Jonny Smith is what is Jonny Smith's height? Seriously? And then what? And I was looking this morning, and then on a website it says Jonny Smith is of medium stature at 5'8".
That's not me.
You need to address this.
I should have to show my official measurements.
Alert the lawyers, Smith. I say.
Yeah,
sorry, man. Go on. So
6'3", and this car had an immensely short wheelbase, and a lot of people told us it wouldn't be possible. You build a really lethal race car, that wouldn't be stable. But then as I did more research and became obsessed with this Enfield 8000 ECC electric city car, I realised that the guy that designed it, who I got in touch with and actually had a good conversations on the phone, he's since died a couple of years ago. But he wrote a book. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because of all the things to be connected to that car. About 15 years after designing and being the engineer on that car, he was the chief aerodynamics engineer on Thrust 2, the world's fastest car for a long, long time.
Okay.
So he designed the Enfield electric city car, and it had a drag coefficient like nothing. And it was made of square box section steel, so it was strong. It had an aluminium skin, so it was Superleggera, built just like an Aston Martin. That's what I said, and rear wheel drive. And it just worked. It just bloody worked. We put about 1,000 horsepower through it, and 2,400 amps, and it worked. And it took me about a year to get the battery cells I needed, the lithium-ion cells, of the potency and the weight, because you needed a military account. The public can't buy these batteries, so I had to go through a company who I was doing.
You had to join the SAS.
Sort of had to join them, yeah, something, and they kind of like, we'll order them for you, and we will put together the packs and sign them off. And they ended up being like instrumental in the build of this car. Yeah, so the batteries are from. They're a Korean cell, exclusively used in the military for mostly the Bell Super Cobra attack helicopter. It runs the miniguns and the starters for the twin jet engines. So that's the small fact I can give you about that car.
That's an amazing factoid. So did you then get the world record?
Yeah, we got the European record in 2015, and then we got the world in 2016. We needed to beat 10.24 seconds over the quarter mile, and we did it at 9:86.
No shit, that's amazing, man.
9:8. Yeah, we did.
Do you still hold the record?
We only got beaten, I think, last year by the Rimac Nevera. And I've driven the Rimac Nevera, and it's an absolute arse-tearingly fast car. It's so impressive.
What did the Rimac do?
Rimac will do a late 8 over the quarter mile. I think it's astonishingly fast.
Does that not make you want to resuscitate the what was it called? The
Johnny's flux capacitor.
What about goes like the Dickens? Just throwing out some ideas, man. Just throwing out some ideas here, man. You'd have to take that.
Goes like the Dickens.
I'm trying to think of that is so ungodly.
That's.
Do you want to hang up? You can hang up if you want. You have to go. Look at the time.
The deal I did with my wife at the time with the race car was, she said you can do 2 seasons of racing, and then if you don't get the record, you've got to quit. And if you do get the record, you've probably got to quit anyway. A, because of the cost, and B, because the time. You know, people don't factor in the time when you're doing sort of back garden, little shed R&D. It takes so much of your time. So it was such an exciting thing to do, all consuming. We got the record, but ever since, honestly, I feel like a kind of a drug addict that's recovered, but still you get a twitch now and again. And I very much enjoy drag racing. I'm one of not very many people in Britain that does, but I really would like to re-campaign either that car or a similar car, and I have a lot of ideas.
What's that? That shocks me, Johnny. That you have a lot of ideas. What's it like? The sensation. I mean, I have a 220, an XJ220, and when the turbo kicks in, I find it like a trouser soiling event. But I can't even. I feel like that would just be like a wheelbarrow. Someone pushing me around the wheelbarrow compared to what you're talking. What's that like to?
Well, we had it engineered properly. So first and foremost, it was a very stable car, high speed, unusually. But the launch, it didn't have traction control. It didn't have a trans brake or any of the tech which people use when they have launch control type stuff. So it was just the reaction on the pedal. But it gripped and it went, and the torque was so phenomenal. I can't remember the torque figures because I haven't talked about the car for quite a while. It was something like 1,400 pounds-feet, springs to mind. To the point, okay, but what that car did to me was it made me understand how powerful a car could be. The week after, I think it was the week after I set the world record, I had a new at the time AMG GTR come in to test, which is a fast car, right? It's like over 600 horsepower, I think. V8, twin snail V8, and I'm thinking, well, this is a cool car. And I remember going out in it, warming it up, and then going for some blasts, full throttle blasts, and going, is that all it's got? and I realised that's the point. I'd gone straight into the heroin, and everything else was just not going to do the trick. And it really was that moment.
Are you experiencing, like, is it sort of full G-force?
You're getting full, yeah, like you're getting pushed, you get crushed back in your seat. And because you're in a small car, there was that feeling of vulnerability, which it sort of heightens the senses somewhat. It's not like I'm doing this in a Formula One car with a team of engineers behind me. It's like, I know I built some of this car, and I know what it's like. The feeling was amazing. I've got to say, the feeling was amazing. When you look at the stats, you look at the little timing slip when you go do all your runs, and we look at the telemetry. We had sort of a bit of laptop telemetry. Okay, so we're doing like 0 to 60 in about 2.2 seconds, 2.1 on street tires. And bear in mind, for the benefit of the listeners, this particular drag series I was competing, you have to complete a mandatory street cruise as part of the qualification process. So it's not just get a car off a trailer, check the tires, run it down the strip.
What's a street cruise like? You just drive down the high street shouting at people with a stereo going. When you have one hand on the wheel.
Well, some of them do. You take all these powerful cars and all the other cars that's compete against, V8, 6-cylinder, and you do a 25 to 27 mile cruise around all the countryside and the local towns to where the drag strip is. And then you come back, and if you don't break down on that trip, you tick the box and go, you've qualified. Obviously, you've got to prove the car is legal. And then you race. So it was really exciting. It was proper David versus Goliath. We were up against there's a guy with a Bentley Continental GT drag car, which was running 2,500 horsepower, 2,700 horsepower. I mean, just mad things, mad creations. Really. So
what happened when you won? Did you get like a crackerjack golden pencil?
No, I didn't get anything apart from the video of it and a timing slip, which is just a printout. Looks like a supermarket receipt. But we had the glory of it, Phil. And
surely the millions must have rolled in sponsorship. Aftershave, deodorant, nothing.
No. After the European record in 2015, we got one more sponsor on board who watched it and followed the process, and they went, "How fast do you think it could go?" And we sat there and went, well, what, if we bought another battery pack and added a third battery pack include, we could probably get this much quicker. And they were like, well, how much do you need for it? And I think it was like, well, 12 grand, 15 grand. They went, we'll pay. So I didn't make any money, but it was sort of infamous. And what that did, I think, at the time, this is a lot of it was pre-ludicrous mode in Teslas and stuff. I started to build that car before the Model S existed. So in a small way, it was a sort of pioneering exercise. That's the way I try and look at it.
Are you saying that Elon Musk stole your idea? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not.
Just come out and say it, Jonny. Come on now.
No, what I'm saying is, I guess I had the idea to try and prove the point that you can build an electric car that has a bit of charisma, that hot rodding with EVs can be a thing, and electric motorsport maybe has a future.
But you've always loved electric cars, though. I mean, you
like a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I don't really understand the animosity that car people, petrol heads, have against electric cars. Because for me, I haven't driven very many of them, but when I do, I find it thoroughly enjoyable, just in an entirely different way. It's just like a different flavor of ice cream.
It is. It's exactly like a different type of music for a different mood. I think it's. I think people dislike them because they probably feel threatened by them, that it's going to fuel the extinction of what they love.
Right.
And but the way I look at it is, it's the automotive yin and the yang. I don't drive a V8 petrol car every day because over here and just couldn't really afford to justify it. So day by day, day to day, I do a lot of boring journeys and commuting in an EV, but then the reward of saving on fuel, the tax or whatever, I put into one of my weekend cars or a classic project car. And that classic project car is like it feels more special to get into after doing 2 weeks of EV driving, because you go, yeah, I'm going to fire some petrol up and smell it. And even my son who's 11, when we will get the Dodge out or we'll get something like that, I'll go, Daddy, it does smell really nice. He said, I wouldn't want to smell it every day, but it does smell nice.
Wait, is this a Dodge Charger?
Yeah. So I bought a 68 Charger from the States in 2008. And I've had it ever since. I'm really, really, it's one of those bucket list cars for me, and it did disappoint.
But it's left-hand drive, Jonny.
I know it's left-hand drive.
How can you manage that?
I'm mad. I'm just fucking crazy, aren't I? I know. I'm just.
It's all right, mate. You can sway.
It's a 383 manual, factory manual, numbers matching car, but it's quite patinated and quite ratty, and it's just exactly how I want it to be. I don't mind if I park it and somebody scratches it. It's already got a lot of them. It's
There's something so liberating about that. FYI.
Extremely liberating.
The idea of when cars aren't perfect, it's glorious.
We just use them more.
Yeah.
I think you use them more, and that car now, let's fast forward to now, it's sort of become quite synonymous with me. It's like, oh, it's the Charger with the broken grille. When I'd had it for 10 years, I gave it a 10th birthday present, which was a gold tooth. So one of the overriders is 24 karat gold plated. Just one, not both of them.
You wouldn't want to overdo it.
No, I'm not mad.
There's something funny about it. Cars are so contextual. Like American cars in England are much more interesting than I find than, say, American cars in America. I mean, when I was growing up in England as a kid, my dream was a '57 Chevy Bel Air. Oh, yeah. And then I used to get the classified magazines. When I come to the States to visit, I would get them, and they're black and white, printed on newsprint, and they have all these hundreds of lads, and they'd just pour over them, and they'd be peanuts. I could think, I could bring it over to England and this, that, the other. But then when you see them here, they somehow don't seem so special. But when you see them in England, they're like
brilliant.
Yeah, they're like UFOs.
They are like UFOs. That's what my dad always said. When he said growing up in the '60s, if you saw someone with a Cadillac or a Ford Galaxy or something, it did look like an aircraft car.
Yeah. And, because also England's '60s, '70s, and '80s was a bit grim.
Yeah, there was a lot of grimness about. You're absolutely.
Weirdly, Go on, sorry.
Sorry, carry on. No, carry on.
No, you. I insist.
I said, well, two days ago, when you know when you start looking at old music videos on YouTube, and you think, oh yeah, I want to listen to that song. What was the music video for that song? And you watch it. I watched "Should I Stay or Should I Go" by The Clash. I think.
Oh, they're in the caddy.
They're in that '59 Cadillac convertible Eldorado.
Yeah,
tooling around a fairly grim-looking early '80s London.
That's right.
Wasn't it? I mean, it did look a bit grim, and it looks so out of place. If you haven't watched the video, you should, because the tune's a good tune anyway. But it just looks, and I think that's exactly. They only bought that car and used it because it looks so out of place.
Right.
And I had a Cadillac, not a '59. Briefly, when I lived in London, not because I was trying to reenact that music video at all. It was cheap. That's why I bought it, and it was interesting. And I remember just people being so weirded out by it. They were like, "What are you doing? Why are you driving that? Well, why not?" I cycled to work.
That's hilarious, man. That is such an English reaction. It's funny. I haven't lived in England for so long that I forget how English people, the Englishness of English people, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah.
Like there's sort of a slight outrage that you would have the audacity to do something, that's a little unusual. But by the same token, people in England love eccentricity, but it's a very specific kind of eccentricity.
It's true, and I think I've always sort of celebrated that. I mean, I've had sort of a couple of low riders, and I remember the first thing people do, they'll see you go, I daily drove a low rider in 1990. Was it on the airbag? So could you hop hydraulics? It? Yeah, you could I used to three-wheel it when we used to hit lots of traffic. I would three-wheel, and I loved it. I was obsessed because I remember watching Boys in the Hood when it came out, 1992 or 91, and just being fixated, going, I have to own a car like that at some point. And that's why people would come up to me with the low rider. We'd park it at a cocktail angle or drop the back or something. People would go, but what's it for? And I go, it'd just be like, it's not for anything. There's no point to it at all.
It's to get through tight spots. You want to just get through on three wheels and you can just squeeze through.
I tell you what, it was really good for. One year we had really bad floods. And like I said, I was young. I was on my first journalist job. It was my only car for 3 years every day.
This is amazing, Jonny.
Yeah, it was a Mark I Ford Granada. Do you remember what the Mark I Ford Granada was? Because I couldn't afford an American car, so I had a Mark I Ford Granada. And I came up to this flood, and everyone was chickening out. I'm not going through that too. A couple of Land Rover Defenders went through. And I thought, so I just went, put it right out on its hind legs and went through this Ford, no problem at all. Then dropped it back down again. It's like, this is practical.
Wait, hang on a minute. Hold on a second. Let's just rewind. It was a Ford Granada, as in,
like the Sweeney.
This is fucking amazing. This is an English Ford Granada. You turn into a lowrider. So where did you get all the lowrider kit from? Did you have to import it from the States?
Yeah. There was a couple of cottage industries in the UK, and one guy who'd been doing it was an engineer by trade.
So for people who don't know, that Ford Granada was kind of a traveling salesman's car, right?
Yeah. Big saloon.
A four-door family traveling salesman's car in the 70s and 80s. Is it 80s? 70s, 80s?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have like deep metallic flake paint, or was it just bog standard Ford?
No, it was jade green with gold flake, with a white roof, and had. I'll send you some pictures. It had a tiger fur interior. Yeah, tiger fur interior.
This is fucking amazing. Look, you need to redo this.
But the car?
Yeah, for the channel. You need to bring it back.
I should do, shouldn't I?
It's amazing, man. Because first of all, there's such a juxtaposition. Because when you think of lowriders, you always think of like a Lincoln or something enormous and American with the tiny, shiny chrome wheel.
spoke wires.
Yeah, the whole biz. But a Ford Granada is kind of amazing.
Well, I'll see this a bit. I actually got it featured in Street Machine magazine. Yeah, back in '99.
You are a man of biblical proportions, man. I don't care what the internet says about you being a man of medium stature at 5'8". You are an amazing person, Jonny Smith.
Well, I'm not really. I just like things that are a bit different. I mean, going back to lowriders, I still have a lowrider now. It's been my third. So my first was a Granada, not a, like I say, American Granadas were not very good. British Granadas were pretty cool.
Yeah.
So. Then I did a Jag. I had a Jag XJ220. So 1990 Jag XJ.
Right.
That was black, metal flake, 20s at the time. 20-inch wheels were massive. I put it on 20s, and that was on hydraulics. And then now I have a 64 Chevy Impala Supersport, which is the lowrider that we all know. That was the
Jag is also amazing.
The Jag,
but you should put it on like 14s.
Yeah, I should have done. Well, I've got 14s for the Chevy Impala. And that's the never-ending story.
This is an amazing. I feel like maybe I knew. I don't know. This is utterly fantastic, man. Well, look. What's interesting is that you have these harebrained, oddball ideas, but then you follow through them to the full extent. You commit, and not just one lowrider, but then you keep going.
I know. The problem is, I started that Chevy, for example, when I was 24, 25 years old. I've never finished it. I'm 44 in about a month's time.
Right.
So am I going to just be a sad middle-aged guy three-wheeling down the street? Is it going to be appropriate? My son knows of the car. He doesn't see it very often because it's still being built. I've still never driven it. I've never started the engine. And but I've poured more money into that car than any other. It
is appropriate if it's I think the Jag or the Granada is appropriate.
Oh, the Jag.
Because then you've taken the lowride idea, but you've filtered it through the prism of Englishness.
European.
Yeah, like if you did like a Robin Reliant lowrider.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then it would be extraordinary.
I'll send you the pictures. I mean,
I'd love to see.
Of it. It was of its time, I suppose. But I was a younger man. But I've always
was very Hovis of you. I was a younger man.
I was a younger man. Yeah, I'm not old, but you know what I mean. Different. I'm going to put the lights on.
Has night fallen?
Night is falling. Of course, winter evenings, and we've got some pretty nice frost going on at the moment. It's cold this week. So
see, we should. Well, this is perfect, man. We can end the podcast on some English weather chat.
Do you want to? Yeah. So it's I can't do Fahrenheit. Don't ask me to do Fahrenheit. I don't understand Fahrenheit.
I won't, man. But I feel like I've taken enough of your time, man. But it's been such an extraordinary joy talking to you, man.
Well, thank you.
No, it has. It's been such a laugh, man. And I really love what you're doing. Like I said, I just think you're doing something so interesting and different. You should resuscitate the lowrider.
Well, I will resuscitate the lowrider. I'll send you some pics of that in the electric racing car, and I will come over to the States in the near future. It is a plan, which I've.
Man, I mean, you're more than welcome to whatever bits and pieces I have. If they have any interest, you're more than welcome to drive them around just for laughs.
Well, thank you. I love the fact you've got an XJ220 because you live in New York. Don't
you? Yeah,
you're a New Yorker.
I've loved that car for years. I almost bought one a long time ago and then ended up getting an 037. But then I decided finally I sold a bunch of all the Group B cars and I bought the 220. But then it was in my mind it was kind of incredibly terrifying psychologically for me, the 220, the sort of size of it and all the rest of it. And so I always I never drove it into the city because I felt like it would be just terrifying.
Yeah.
But then I had driven it somewhere because I saw it in New Jersey, and then I had accidentally put my home address in the GPS. And so all of a sudden I found myself on the 220.
Autopilot.
I found myself like not paying attention. I found myself on the approach path to New York City, and you can't really bail out once you're kind of committed. So all of a sudden I was driving through Chinatown in the 220 with buses, like inches away, bike messengers, the whole thing. But it turned out to be not so terrifying. I don't know why I told you that story.
I know, I love it. I think, again, that's a car which I reckon is looking better with age. It's a really good shape, the 220. The silhouette's amazing.
I completely agree, man. I mean, look, I know I'm biased, but I do think that of all those early 90s supercars, if you just pulled them all into like the DB110, the 959, which is the late 80s, whatever, if you didn't know what they were, just from a shape standpoint, the 220 is the most audacious of shapes. The other things are super cool, but the 220 is full spaceship.
It is, isn't it? It is a handsome car.
And also, you might be too tall for it.
Oh no,
at
don't tell me
5'8".
Yeah, well, quite.
At 5'8", you're all right, but at 6'3", you might not.
So, I wish I was 5'8" for some of the cars I've had to drive. I bought a Honda S600 coupe once, and basically restored it, and then couldn't fit in it.
Oh, you have a Honda Insight.
I have a Honda Insight. Yeah, I've owned twice.
I've come very close to buying one of those on a semi-regular basis. I love those.
You really ought to. It's a very rewarding car to drive, I think. Surprising. It's not fast, but the controls are lovely. The steering and it's a wonderfully
is yours green?
Yeah, mine's the green, which is
cool.
Is it citrus green? I think
that's the best color.
Yeah, it is. It's the launch. I love my car. That's why I had to buy it back. And it's
you bought the same car back?
Yeah, it's the same one. I sold it when I needed to do the school run more with the two kids, and then I found out that it had been left under a tree for 7 years, just parked for 7 years, and I couldn't bear it. Just couldn't bear it. So during lockdown, I was like, I've got to get this back. So I got it back, and I've recommissioned it. And it's 330,000 miles on the clock now. It's doing all right. It's doing okay. Original engine, original gearbox. It's original gearbox. 2 clutches. It's just great. Really, really, you've got to drive one.
I love them. I think, and I always thought they were just so interesting looking.
Yeah,
like a very early version. Yeah, like a very early version of that VW. What's it?
The XL1. The Eco. Yeah, but if I could afford it, I would have those 2 cars together because they'd be a great.
How much are those things?
In the UK, I saw one sell for about £60,000, but they're all over the place. There's probably more. A lot of them are higher. They're owned by some quite unusual people.
Do they make a left-hand drive one? See, look, I'm being left-hand drivist.
Do you know? I think they're all left-hand drive. I don't think they made a right. I'll have to double check.
Is it a central driving?
No, you'd expect it to be because it looks like it's from Thunderbirds.
Yeah, it does.
It looks amazing. You should look into it.
I can only get into it like that.
Did they sell them in the States?
I don't think so. Oh, but wait, when did they make them? When did they make those things? They're too young to be. You have to be 25 years or older to get in the States.
Yeah, it's a decade ago.
Yeah.
Even if it's an eco car, still can't.
Yeah, there's all sorts of regulations.
That's bad. Isn't it? That's why Nissan Figaros and stuff have gone crazy with prices.
That's right.
Because they've all been going to California.
Yeah, and same for the Pajeros actually.
I thought.
Yeah.
Anything, and I guess all the Skylines.
Well, basically, if you want to make a couple of quid, you have to just see what's coming up on the 25-year rule that's about to be legal in the States. You buy a couple.
I might do that.
That's my parting gem of wisdom.
I think I like. No, you've got some good gems. I would like one of those gems. That's a good idea. I would like to do.
All right, well, look, man.
It's been a good podcast. Enjoyed
it was really, it was fantastic, man. It was such a joy, and thanks again, honestly, for saying your barn find jacket just fell off.
Oh
that signifies the end of the podcast, man. When the jacket falls off, it's the end of the podcast.
The fleece is gone.
That's right.
The fleece is gone. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And if you want to check out my channel, feel free.
Yeah, for people who haven't paid attention, the Late Break Show on YouTube and all your various ancillary sub brands.
Yes.
Really worth watching.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks again, man.
Thank you.
Bye, Jonny.